This young boy claims that it's hard to maintain cause he gets discriminated due to race. And this young girl says they don't judge her by her brain, too busy looking at her body and her face. Let's talk about life, let's talk about love. If we talk about love, then we should talk about us. And if we're talking about us, we need to talk about growth. They talk about you, but they should talk about both. It's easier to hate now and harder to care. We used to offer help, now we gossip and stare. Comment, like, swipe, share. Hate used to be rare, now you see it everywhere. Man wants to be radical and take away life. Behaving like an animal, you see it in his eyes. Load up his weapon, walk in, aim. 51 body count like a computer game. And we want to share the video to what entertain. Lost in the crowd watching life on a stage. It's a terrible state, yesterday was heartbreak. Today she's back on YouTube putting makeup on her face. And the men are all the same, but I don't complain. We don't help each other, we the slander and shame. Do something good, they forget about your name. When you do something bad, watch how fast you find fame. Inside the body, there's a piece of flesh. If this flesh is good, then also is the rest. Verily, it is the heart. What a life y'all lost, sitting here wishing that I could press restart.
People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. Do you practice what you preach, or do you turn the other cheek? Allah, help us, send us guidance from above. Cause people got me questioning, where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love? The love, the love.
What happened to the love and what happened to the peace? We got wars in the streets and wars in the Middle East. Gunshots, bombs drop, people flee. And now we have millions of refugees that are scattered overseas. And I've become numb to the tragedies as we add another number to the casualties. Another kid gets stripped from his family. I'm asking myself what has happened to humanity. And they want to talk to us about terrorism, despite the killings by the far right and white supremacism. But I guess all that is irrelevant to the president of the USA who wants to make America great. But all he's ever done was make America hate. And gun crimes at its highest ever rate. Mosques get shot and schools get sprayed. Then nothing's gonna change when politicians are paid by the NRA. And we wonder why they're so corrupt. But it's okay cause in God we trust. And even if it's all we got everything we need. As the prophet told us, you will never enter paradise until you believe. And you will never believe until you start to love. And in order to love, you need to spread the peace.
We need some peace and quiet in this world. So tired of the fighting and the wars. Put the knives down, put the guns down. Stop the mothers crying cause the child's gone now. Stop the killing cause nobody's winning. Can we stop the sinning? People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. Do you practice what you preach, or do you turn the other cheek? Allah, help us, send us guidance from above. Cause people got me questioning, where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love? The love, the love.
Too comfortable with the way that we living. We forget about the orphanage children. Poverty a weapon doing all the killing. Desensitized is a way that we feeling. Being silent is a form of abuse. When my people end up dead on the news. Television telling lies in disguise of the truth. Make a difference with these words is my oath in the booth. Yeah. Never divide, gotta unite against this hate. Leaving mosque and body bags and headed straight to heaven's gates. Trying to survive, victim of oppressor, choose a side. Aiming for the physical, but never gonna kill their faith. Our legacy gon' live forever. If one of us is cold, we gon' lend a sweater. Feet to feet, stand strong, 10 toes on the carpet. Though we ain't blood, break bread if you starving. Where was the love for the villages in Mali? Selected with your morning, so we see through your sorries. Assimilating to the system, standing for what's right, left, Ilhan. Ridiculed just cause she's a hijabi. Haven't forgot about the families in Palestine. Rohingyas getting burned alive in Burma. Muslims put in concentration camps in China. These situations that you probably never heard of. Islam the fastest growing religion. White supremacists playing a part of spreading the message. If we all how we portray, then everybody be finished. I set the record like Guinness, never framing our image.
People killing, people dying, shooting, hurt, and you hear them crying. Do you practice what you preach, or do you turn the other cheek? Allah, 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 help us, send us guidance from above. Cause people got me questioning, where is the love?
Hello, good evening. Hope everybody's having a good weekend, or the start of one, rather. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my opinion on Brian Laundrie's notebook reveal. I hate to say it, but a lot of it makes sense. But a lot of it doesn't. I mean, the thing that I don't get, and when it was put out as a good question, is when was it written? That's a good question, because I just don't see him sitting around in the swampy area writing an 8-page letter. So I think it was written before he went out there. And maybe he added that last little line, that 3 lines to the end of it, and then put it back in his bag. But before we even got to this part, there's so many questions about the aftermath. If you believe his story that he tells in the notebook, then what about his actions after? Like going on that hike, trying to pay the girl and the guy in the Jeep money, going to that bar. Was he like disorientated? They didn't say that he appeared to be disorientated when the guy and the girl in the Jeep talked to him. And this would have been after the death of Gabby, according to the timeline that's been put out. So his actions after is the part that really isn't covered in the note, which makes you question when he wrote the note. And I would think he wrote it before he went out. Maybe even back as far as when he created the act of doing it. So that's just not going to be known ever when he wrote it. I could see if he was out. Hold on. I could see if he was out, and what he says about it being so dark that they were, going to the campsite, that they couldn't see, and she slipped, and that we all saw that was a super rocky thing. So I could believe that, and I could believe that she would have a serious injury more than a bump. That's part of what is still my confusion, because of somebody on here who made themselves famous off of this case, talked about a huge pool of blood on the rocks, but never showed the pictures that this person had of that. And that would be our famous content creator, who is the number one person who loves to report on this story. And we all know who I'm talking about. So, she refused to show that picture when she had it, and she still hasn't showed it, if she has it. She also was wrong on some other things, like the paint marks was actually the people on sites directions of where to walk, and she said it was bullet holes. So like marking of the bullet holes, so that wasn't correct. Um, there's just a lot of it's the after effects of what he did after. If he did exactly what he said in the notebook, then he wrote nothing about his actions afterwards. um, and this again could be bad reporting that I have information on, so this is just my thoughts and my own opinion. So if he didn't do all of those things, then if he didn't go with the girl and the guy in the Jeep, if he didn't try to pay him a lot of money, if he wasn't just, traveling 2 and 3 miles, if he wasn't seen in this bar in another town, how much of this is made up by someone uh, to enhance the viewing of their channel at the time they were telling this story? So, I mean, I know that information, but I don't know if it's true or not now, because the what he wrote, it makes sense. The temperatures in the last week of August were at night were between 30, sometimes 29, sometimes 31. The whole last week, they showed that on the news too. Of could it, really be his truth of she was cold, because how cold did it get? And so they looked it up on the weather map or whatever, and it it's true. She could have fallen in the water with her clothes on, and that automatically, if the temperature is already 39, even 40, even, that's out in the air. That's not when you're wet. So she definitely would have been in hypothermia, or the starting of it, plus whatever injury she she had. The problem with saying that, about that content creator who put out, there was a whole section of rocks right there that they picked up and they took away, saying it was full of blood. Well, unless she's going to show that picture, um, that doesn't go along with the journal that they have now, and it doesn't go along with the coroner's report, because in order for there to be that much blood in one area by the creek, um, it would have been a wound that he could see bleeding, and a wound that they would have said in the autopsy of an open skull fracture that would create that bleeding. Now, a big, she hit her head on the front of the rocks or in the back. Either way, that definitely could be a huge concussion that just got worse and got worse. I mean, I hate to believe it's true too, but his actions in the story of his notebook make sense. He couldn't see, they hadn't built a fire yet, so they were just in the dark doing what they do, and she slipped. Crossing, I guess they crossed the creek, and then she slipped, which that would go with if there was a big pile of blood right there where that content creator said of the picture she's not going to show. That would go along with the notebook story as well. But what then again, you have the news person who's doing this reveal of it did not say anything about an open wound, that he wrote about an open wound. And if there was a lot of blood there, um, there'd be an open wound. And Brian didn't mention that at all, that she was bleeding. He mentioned her having a concussion, and his description of how she was acting would be accurate for a person who had a severe concussion. I mean, I can tell you right now, I had a fall in my house, and I hit my head on the wall when I was close to the doorway when I was one day, and that's where the beams are in the walls, and I hit so hard. It's not a rock; it's just a wall. Um, I had a big red, mark and on the back of my skull. It swelled up. Doctors said I had a concussion, a pretty bad one too. I might say it took uh, how long, Squirrel? Over a month. Hello.
Hmm?
I was asking you a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said, when I had my concussion from hitting the wall, the doctors, it lasted what, over a month?
Yes.
And I had a big knot on the back of my head, and I had a big mark on the back of my head. And I didn't fall down and hit a bunch of rocks. If I had, I could easily see that my head would have split open if it had been me. Um, so I couldn't believe that. But the thing that just, I don't know, why didn't he like throw her over his shoulder? He's a pretty big guy, bigger than her, and go back across the water and take her to the car. I don't know. It could have been the whole thing of he was panicking because he couldn't see. Um, it could be a number of things. I mean, we're talking about 20-year-olds here. Um, yes, they were experienced in what they were doing, but accidents happen um, in nature, things you don't expect. Now, does that describe his behavior when he got home? The only thing that describes his behavior to me, in my opinion, of when he got home was that he had already decided to kill himself before he ever got home. Um, Typically, people who are going to commit suicide, they have a habit of cleaning things up, making things perfect. Like if they do it in their bedroom, they're going to clean it up. It's going to be perfect. Things are going to be put in their place. Um, Wherever they are going to do this, unless it's just a, wide out in the open outside thing, they they tend not to want to create more stress for the person that finds them. So, for him to appear to be happy and visiting with his family, although it's a horrible thing to think about, it is, for a person who's decided to commit suicide, it makes sense. It may not make sense to some people, but it makes sense because he already knew he was going to do it. Another thing that I find odd, it isn't that though. That's weird. Like the things that I think are weird are not like him coming home, visiting with other people, his family, seeing them for the last time, and then killing himself. That to me is kind of normal on people who are going to kill themselves. And they appear happy. They never appear, they appear happy in their times before doing it. And it's because they know that they're going to do it. They have a place of peace in them. Is that nice to hear? No. Everybody thinks they could stop it if they knew someone that was going to do it. But every case that I've like dealt with or seen or anything like that of a person committing suicide, they do these acts, and they just they just do this to make it easier on the people who find them. Just like in the last of the letter, make sure you pick up everything. This is what he said. Make sure you pick up everything or trash or anything, because Gabby didn't like that. Um, that's probably a true statement from him, because he obviously packed, all his possessions that he took with him. He packed them up nicely, or we wouldn't even have the notebook. It would have been destroyed by the water. So, when he's saying make sure you clean everything up, I'm sure he's referring to maybe his clothes or anything that the animals tore apart and stuff like that, because it would just, sorry, it would just make sense that he would say that, um, because he knows her. I mean, this is going to be the hardest thing for us to just accept now, is for us to just accept that he did this out of mercy. That is the reason he said he did it. He said he stayed with her. He said he tried to keep her awake. He said he spooned with her to keep her warm. Um, and when they found her, she was in a like fetal type position, which would go with him spooning with her. If that is true, the point of it is, no matter what we think about Brian at this point, we could all have our speculations before, because we didn't have the notebook. But the things that just bother me are the after effects, and how many happen for real versus bad information from another content creator that we all know. And now that's something I want to go back and make sure myself, validate myself, other than just getting evidence from, or get evidence that is fed to me by the person covering it at this time. I want to know, did he really travel all that way? Because people will say, they saw him and they did this stuff and that stuff, and take credit for stuff they didn't do or they had no part of. They just want to be a part of the, you know, story, a part of being, I guess they thought to get claim for fame. I don't know, because he can't dispute it. He didn't write about it. He wrote about everything in detail except what happened after. He wrote about going to see his family after and why he was doing it. But he never covered anything about going with other people, trying to catch rides, He didn't, not a word on that. So if some facts were fed to us wrong, there could be a possibility there are more facts that were fed to us wrong. And the sad fact is that his 8-page letter, his 8-page confession, is the truth. That just could be what the truth is. And some people say, mm-mm. Ain't nobody gonna do all that and then kill theirself. He said he killed her. He said that in a note. He said, I killed her to put her out of her misery because she was in so much pain. She would go in and out of consciousness. When she came out of consciousness, she was, what a person would do in that kind of pain, wailing probably, and just, you know, confused. And this is his story. And then he said when he couldn't take it anymore, he didn't want her to suffer anymore because he felt like she was suffering. Um, and I could see that she, I could believe that she is suffering. Um, I could see that she's suffering from the details given. Sorry, I got distracted. I got distracted. You know what? I don't like that thing right there. I can't see.
Sorry.
Sorry. She said sorry. Sorry, shut up. Get over it. No, she didn't say that. Don't let nobody go out there telling no lies. Do you have any opinion on this? Like, I think we differ on this somehow.
Um, I don't know. I hadn't really
She'll
thought
tell us
about
whenever.
it.
She said she hadn't thought about it. She'll tell us when she gets that thought there. But I just, I can see a lot of it as being truth. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my arm checked for my diabetes, and it was distracting me. And that beeping sound you heard was my arm alarm going off. So sorry, that's why I got a little flumbled with what I'm talking about. And I caught her off guard, because she was fixing to walk over here, and she's thinking about my diabetes, and checking it and writing all their stuff down. And I'm like, just going to throw a question out there to confuse her. No, not really. She didn't get confused. She just wasn't expecting me to ask a question at that moment. Normally, she checks my diabetes. She just flies right by my arm with this meter. It's not a meter, it's something else. It's some type of machine. And she scans my arm and has to do all this paperwork next because it went off, and yada yada yada. Anyway, back to Brian Laundrie. He just, if the letter, and only God knows. I'm gonna just tell you that right now. Only God knows the truth. Do I believe someone 20 something years old panic? And he also said in the notebook that when he wanted to leave her and go get help, but she told him to stay. Like, basically, I guess, like, grabbed him or something to not leave, and didn't want the fire to go out because then it would be worse. And they were at the back end of this place. It wasn't like right by the ranger thing or anything. So now I'm going to get some water. So hold on a second. But I wasn't expecting the notebook to be as nice as it was. You know, it was in good shape. So if I don't think those dry bags are any good now, I know they are. Not that I'm going out hiking in the swamp, but I don't know. There's just a lot of information from the that has to be cleared up for me to say, yeah, this is best case scenario, but it is the best case scenario, because even though the questions I'm wondering about are not cannot be proven, they're both deceased. So I'll never know the end of the answers. This is the best answers we're going to get. In my mind, they play in part to a lot of the evidence. Um, so That's just the way that it is for right now, and that's how the way it's going to be forever. He said he couldn't deal with not being with her. He wanted to have a death of, what do you call it? Great, impacting, disgusting, where you're going to shoot yourself in the head, yet um, do that so that you can let the animals rip you apart, because that's what he said. I want these animals to tear me apart. He didn't give himself a nice little just shooting the head and I'm dead. He wanted himself, according to the notebook, to feel so much more of a painful, destructive to his body type death. I mean, yeah, he shot himself so he may not have felt it, but you don't know that either. There are plenty of cases where people have tried to shoot themselves in the head and they didn't die right away. You know, they've survived depending on how the bullet went in or where it went in. It just depends on that. So, for all we know, he could have survived a little, few hours or whatever. And, now you got fresh blood everywhere. So, them animals are coming, especially out in there. So I'm not trying to give him a nicer, what,
Um,
a nicer way of dying, because he was not out there to get a nicer way of dying. You know, he was out there to make make his death as horrific as it could be, because that's what he thought would make himself, I guess, equally in killing her, because he says it was out of mercy. And we don't know. We weren't there. We don't know how dark it was. We don't know, could he have made it. We all want to say shoulda, woulda, coulda, but we can't. Only God knows the truth right now, and only God can deal with the situation of both of their deaths. That's his business now. That's not our business anymore. I don't know that it gave the family any relief or made them feel any better about the subject. And now we're still going to go on to that court case, I guess, with the laundries and the Petito family. And do I think that the Laundrie family, the parents, knew something? Mm, I think he had to say something on his way home. I don't believe that they did not know that. But then again, if I second have a second thought about it, then maybe he didn't. I mean, there's two things. I mean, he might have told them she fell and died, and that's why they got the lawyer. He might not have told them the truth at all, but just told them that, hey, she hit her head, she fell down, she died, and that's what they were protecting, their son, because they thought that's what the facts were. Maybe that's what he said. This is in my opinion. Um, but his after effects are still going to get something with the parents done. I think if the Laundrie family had any mercy in their self, that they would just give the family what they want. I don't know how I would handle it other than that. If I had it to give what they were asking for, I don't think I would fight it. You know, That's just me, though. I mean, if I had a kid and my kid said, "Hey, you know, Gabby, I'm on my way home. Gabby fell, hit her head. She died. It was an accident, but I'm on my way home. I need a lawyer." Parents would have, or maybe he was talking and maybe whoever he was talking to told him to shut up. Okay, stop talking. You can tell us when you get here. Um, just get here safely. It could have been that. They might have stopped him from telling the story and getting just that little bit out to know for them to call the lawyers. Again, there are a big part of the letter, the 8 pages. That's why I don't believe he wrote it when he was in the reserve. Um, I believe he wrote that before, if he went out to, go around, like when he wandered off and met with the Jeep people and tried to pay them or whatever, whatever. To me, I think he wrote it before then because it sounded more present tense than someone who writes something past tense. That's just my thought on it, just how I felt like it was read. I write a lot of stuff, and usually you can tell that I wrote something on the moment. And if I am writing about a past event, I guess, because of the wordage we use. But I think it's time that we just let Gabby be in peace. Unfortunately, people will not agree with me when I say to let Brian be in peace. Because, yeah, you can love somebody that much. You can love someone that much that you would die before you'd be here without them. Maybe you never felt that way, or someone you know felt that way, but it can happen. It's probably rare, but it can happen. I truly believe that. Um, so, with that said, that's all I wanted to come on here and say. Just my 2 cents, and in my opinion, my thoughts on the whole Brian Laundrie notebook subject. I am going to go back and look in my notes and try to, find out if, you know, if he really did go walking around after her death, like that was told to, reported to us, that was factual information, because I don't know that now if it is. So I'm just going to go and try to follow up on those facts. And that's the facts we have now, and you're just going to have to accept it because there's no one else to give us the information. Her autopsy and his letter is all we got. Y'all have a good night and have a great weekend. Stay safe.